Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I was trying to make a stitch out of that video, but for some reason my audio is not being recorded. I don't know, that's creepy. And I'm not really a good of a storyteller, but I still want to tell this 100% true story, okay? Anyways, back in Puerto Rico, me and my family used to go to this Catholic church. This Catholic church will sometimes like do this thing called el pulguero. It's like a thrift shop, right, where people resell their old stuff instead of like throwing them away for really cheap prices. So my grandma took me and my sister to one of those pulguero things after church, and my sister saw this really old antique porcelain doll. Let me see if I can find the picture. Hold on. So my sister saw a really similar, like it's almost the exact same doll as this one at the thrift shop at the pulguero, and she wanted it. My grandma bought it for her, and then after that my sister just went crazy for this doll, okay? She absolutely loved this thing. She took it everywhere with her. She went outside and played with her. She watched movies with that doll on her side. She even went to sleep with this thing, okay? Estoy contando tu historia de la muñeca.
¿Qué? No!
Anyways, she loved this thing, okay? There was no reason for her to hate it. One night, weeks after she bought it, I woke up like at 2 or 3 a.m. to the sound of my door opening. So I looked to where the door was just to see who it was. I saw this small black silhouette of a girl standing behind the door, just halfway opened. Of course, I assumed it was my sister, so I called to her name like 2 times, but she didn't answer. After a 3rd time, she just slowly closed the door back again. I got concerned, so I stood up and went to her room just to check her out. I knocked on her door twice, no answer, decided to open the door, and guess what? She was asleep. I called her again just to double check that she was actually sleeping, and she was. After that, I just went to my mom's room just to check my mom out. I knocked on her door, and surprisingly, she opened it, and she was like wide awake, but she was really scared. So I asked her like, what happened? What's wrong? And then she said that she was sleeping, but she woke up to her name being called. And when she opened her eyes and looked down to like the end of the bed, there was a small black silhouette of a girl standing there. But when she called my sister's name, because she also assumed it was my sister, she just vanished. So me and my mom saw the exact same silhouette of a little girl in our rooms, and they just vanished. But it doesn't stay there though. The morning after, me and my mom were getting breakfast ready for before school, and my sister woke up crying, running towards my mom's arms. She was crying, repeatedly saying, la odio esa muñeca, which translates to, I hate her, I hate that doll. When my mom asked her, like, why, what's wrong? She said that same night she had a dream that she was laying on her bed and she couldn't move. And then the doll told her that she was gonna go to me and my mom's room to unalive us. So yeah, we kind of figured there was something wrong, and it was because of the doll. And after that, we just threw the whole thing away. My mom prayed for it. And like I said, my sister loved this doll with her life. She was so excited with it. And then just one night, she had that nightmare. At the same time, me and my mom saw that thing. Well, I don't know. That was my ghost story, guys. I hope you guys stuck to it. If you stuck to it, thank you for watching. Have a good night.
So I have a friend that saw this trend, and as soon as she saw it, she messaged me. She's like, you have to share your story with this trend, right? And well, my wife and kids just left, being home alone for a couple hours, so I'm gonna scare myself retelling y'all this story. So this story starts back when I'm 5, right? I lived in this housing development, and right across from my backyard sat right on the street. Okay, and then across the street was a row of houses, and there was this one house over there that was, you know, old, rundown, like typical haunted house scary movie shit, right? So I used to sit out back and I'd play with my toys, and I would always see this old lady in the upstairs window in a rocking chair, right? So me being 5, I didn't think anything about it. I'd wave to her all the time, you know, she'd wave back, and it was whatever. And then one day, my mom's like, who are you waving at? And I'm like, oh, I'm waving at that old lady in the window over there, right? So She's like, what old lady? I'm like, the old lady. It's sitting right up in that window. She's in the rocking chair. She's wearing the white nightgown and, you know, has her hair in the rollers, you know. So, like, my mom goes white because apparently I described what this old lady looked like and what she always did to a T. And she died, like, 4 years before I was born, apparently. So, that's where it starts. Now, fast forward until I'm about 12, right? And me and 3 of my friends are sitting in the backyard. You know, it's a summer day, ain't got nothing to do. And, you know, we decide we're like, let's go in the house. Let's see what's up about it. Because you would hear noises coming from there all the time. No kidding. You hear noises coming from there all the time. But, you know, the adults were like, it's like homeless people break in there and they like to sleep in there. It ain't nothing major, right? So we decided to go check it out. So you couldn't get in the front door because the front was all boarded up. It wasn't happening. So we go around the back, and the back porch from wear and tear had sunk down. And when it sunk down, it took the door frame with it. So the back door didn't set level anymore. So give it a little shoulder pop, you get in the door, no problem, right? So we go in the back door, and we get in there, and, you know, there's beer cans and bottles all over the floor, you know, graffiti on the walls and stuff. So it's like, okay, you know, maybe the noises are just teenagers and homeless people hanging out in here, right? So immediately to my right, there was a kitchen counter, and it had a junk drawer that was open. Like, it was out, it was open. The counter ran all the way down the wall. And then opposite of that counter was the stairs that went upstairs. But they were enclosed. Like, you know how, like, sometimes attics will have the enclosed stairs where you open the door and go up instead of having a pull down ladder. It was like that. So, like, that's in the opposite corner. And then right across from us, from the kitchen, is the living room. And between the living room and the kitchen, there's a little cutout there. And that was the door that goes down to the basement, right? So we get in. We're looking around. Now, me, personally, I started watching scary movies pretty much right out the womb. So I was like, okay, I'm in. I saw it. We don't need to do anything else. I'm good, right? But my friends are like, oh, well, let's go look around. I want to look in the basement. Now, again, I tell you, I've been watching scary movies from the hop. I'm like, I'm not going to the basement. Because the basement is where all the truly evil shit always is. Okay? Like, I ain't doing it. So, you know, they're making fun of me. You know, I'm scared, this and that. And, you know, I'm like, okay, whatever. We'll go, you know, go check out the basement. Let me know what's up. So they go across the kitchen. House is completely quiet. Okay? And they go across the kitchen. And they go down into the basement. Like 5 seconds after they go down into this basement, I start hearing creaking upstairs, like a rocking chair makes, you know, back and forth. And then it stops, and I hear dum 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 dum, like somebody's walking across the hallway upstairs. And then it's like, like somebody's running down those stairs. The door flies open. Okay? I feel like a gust go past me. The junk drawer that is open next to me slams shut. I'm out. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. I don't care what y'all doing in that basement. You were the dumb ones who went down in there. I'll survive and tell your story. I'm gone. So I bounce. I don't try to get them. I don't yell. Deuces. So I'm out the back door. And I run across the street. And I don't stop running till I'm like in my kitchen. Okay? So now I'm in the kitchen. I'm sitting at my kitchen table. And I'm looking out the kitchen window at this house across the street. And I'd say like maybe 30 seconds, a minute later, my friends come out. And they don't look right. You know, you see like in those movies where like people have trauma and they just kind of have that like that shell shock look. and they're just like stomp like it's not good. One of my friends was black. Have you ever seen a pale black person, like a black person who was like scared white from fear? Cause like I did. It was wild. But anyway, so they come across the street, and I'm like, what'd y'all see down there? You're like, what happened? You know, the door flew open, the door shut, and I was gone. You know, they would not tell me what happened in that basement. I mean, never. Like, they wouldn't tell me that day. Like, anytime, you know, we were talking about it, like, years later, you know, I'd be like, yeah, so what did you guys see in the basement that day? And, like, conversation would just stop, you know? So, like, I never did find out. Now, the real wild thing is, out of the 4 of us that went into the house that day, I'm the only one that is still alive. All 3 of them are dead. All 3 of them were murdered, not at the same time, in different incidences, years apart. Coincidence? Maybe. I don't know. But I'm definitely thankful I didn't go into the basement that day, or that they never told me, because, you know, it kind of feels like that if you know what happened out in there, you got.
All right, here we are. Didn't think I'd ever jump on one of these TikTok trends, but I have a story that spans across generations in my family. So I'll share that with you. I'll start with what happened to me. So I was 5 years old, and my father was pastoring a very small country church in North Carolina, in Spring Hope, North Carolina. So I'm in kindergarten, and I wasn't the type of kid that had tons of nightmares. I had some, but I'm just prefacing the story with that just so you kind of understand what was happening. And I remember going to sleep one night, and I don't know, I mean, I was 5 years old, so I don't remember the time of night that I woke up, but I was woken up, and I used to sleep on my back. To this day, after this, I've never slept on my back. I can't do it. I was sleeping on my back, and something in the room kind of like startled me. We always slept with fans. I still sleep with a fan, but something just woke me up. And I remember opening my eyes, and I saw this shadowy figure standing right beside my bed, like looking down on me. And even as a young kid, I was thinking that I was dreaming. Like, this is a dream. This isn't really happening. And as I'm looking up at the figure, over his shoulder, there's a sword sticking out. Like, I can clearly see a sword. And it's just standing there, and you don't know how you're going to respond when weird things like that happen. And I'm just laying there as a 5-year-old kid looking up at this figure, and he reaches over his shoulder to grab it, just like this. He starts pulling it out. I go to scream because I'm a kid, and I try to scream, and he jumps on me and starts choking me. I couldn't scream. I was trying to scream for my parents, and I couldn't. And, you know, growing up in a religious family, I went to Sunday school and all that kind of stuff. As a 5-year-old kid, the only thing I remembered was that one of my Sunday school teachers told me that if I'm ever in trouble, that if I can just say Jesus, say the name of Jesus, that it'll help. So I just tried to say Jesus. I was able to get out Jesus, and it jumps off of me and disappears. I jump up out of the bed, run to my parents' bedroom, and I'm freaking out. And as a 5-year-old kid, I'm not really explaining to them what's happening. They just thought I had a bad dream. So I ended up sleeping with my parents for I don't know how long. Eventually, I moved back into my room. Never happened again. Okay. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of wrote that out of my mind like it was just a dream. Like, you know, you have something traumatic kind of happen to you. I just rationalized it in my mind that it was a dream. Fast forward about 17-ish years. I'm a senior in college. Come home from college one weekend, hanging out with my family, mom, dad, and sister. We're sitting around the house watching some TV. Well, there's a bad thunderstorm. Power goes out for several hours. And we're sitting in the living room, and my dad, he was one of those guys that like to tell scary stories and stuff like that. So he's like, let's tell like ghost stories, scary stuff. And so we're all making up just fake stuff. And we're sitting there in candlelight, you know, it's kind of creepy. And my dad, he goes, how about this one? He said, I'll tell you a real one. Something crazy that's happened to all the men in our family. And I'm like, still not thinking anything about it. He says when he was in high school, so he was a little older than I was, he was sleeping in a room in their house, and there was not like tons of blinds on this was in Sanford, Florida. His father was also a pastor. And there was tons of blinds on this big sunroom type of room that he was sleeping in, but there was a street light, right, that would always kind of shine in to his room. And he said one night that he was asleep, but something kind of crossed over and just blocked out the light because he was used to having that light. And he woke up and he saw this dark, shadowy figure of a man standing over him with a sword sticking out from his back. And he said he reached back to grab it, and he started freaking out and just runs out of the room as fast as he can to get away from it. And he goes and tells his dad what had happened. Well, it was at that point that my grandfather, his father, tells him the story of how when he was, in his early teens as well, that he was sleeping on the back porch, and this was in Mississippi. I believe it was in Hamilton, Mississippi, or somewhere like that. Not too far from the Tupelo area. It might have been Hattiesburg. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Anyway, a lot of times he would sleep on the back porch, in the screened-in back porch, because it would be nice and cool. And the family, they would keep the blankets on the back porch. And so in the middle of the night, if somebody got cold, they'd walk right to the back porch, open the screen door, get a blanket, and go back in. So my grandfather, he was sleeping on the back porch that night. And he said he heard the screen door open. And he was kind of rolled over on his side, and he figured it was his mother because his mom would come outside all the time and get a blanket whenever it got really cold. He said, Mom, he said, shut the door behind you, because he didn't hear the door slam shut. He just heard it open. And he said nobody answered him, and he turned, rolled over, and there was a dark, shadowy figure of a man standing over him with a sword sticking out from his back. And he said the guy reaches up, tries to grab it, and of course he freaks out, goes running just as hard as he can to his father, and he's freaked out. He's telling his dad, and that was when the next day, my great-grandfather, his name was Pete, told him the story of how that when he was a little boy, about the same age that I was, of course that was back in the early 1900s, that back then everybody was poor and everybody had a lot of kids. It was like farming type of family. And there were so many kids and they were so poor, they had one big bed for all the kids. And instead of sleeping, normal way, they turned like width way, and they could sleep more children in the bed. So they all slept in the same position every single night, in the same spot. Well, when my great-grandfather one night, he said that he was laying there asleep and he heard something. And he opened his eyes, and there was a dark, shadowy figure standing over him with a sword sticking out of his back. And he reached back and he went to grab it. Same exact thing. And he jumps up screaming, running, wakes everybody up. And whenever any of us this happen to us, we'd freak out and scream, and it would just disappear. Well, this is where this one gets a little bit scarier. So my great-grandpa, he was really freaked out for a long time. And his dad, it didn't happen to him when he was a kid, so he didn't understand what was going on, but he was scared to death, and he slept with his parents for a little while. Well, the next night, the first night after he had this happen to him, his little brother slept in his spot. And the next day, they woke up and he was dead. They never found out why he died, how he died, but he was sleeping in his spot the night after he saw what I believe it was a demon with the sword is what I've always thought. You can call it a ghost, you can call it a demon, whatever you want. But going back generations, this has happened to men in our family. It's happened to me, my dad, his dad, and his dad. And it hasn't happened to any of the women in our family. And up until that night when my dad was telling us this ghost story, I never knew this was a thing. And he's immediately sitting there telling this story that spans generations. And I'm just sitting there like, and I start remembering like all the little details. It's like it just kind of pulled back the curtain and I could remember exactly what happened. And it was exactly the same thing that they had described.